After setting up G-class folders, you now have folders for each of your classes, as well as folders for each of your students. Now, what you probably want to do is send documents to your students that is shared specifically just between that student and you. And you also are going to have control now over these documents. You can choose when to end the editing rights, so students can no longer change their document, for example, after a due date. You also want to be able to title the document in the right way and store it in the right spot. So the first thing you need to do is you need to have your document that you want to send to your students. Now, the way this works is that that document can't be nested within folder after folder after folder. So I have placed my letter to teacher template that I'm going to send to my students in my Avid 1314 folder. So you can see I have it here opened up, and here's the template. Now this template is going to be sent out to each of my students. You can even send out a blank template. It could be a completely blank page. It could be the assignment instructions. It could be something that students are going to fill out, like a worksheet where you have a bunch of questions listed and you want them to answer it. But this is just the simple template that I'm going to send to my students. Now, it will help you to have a folder where these documents are going to go. They actually get stored in two spots. One is in each of the student individual documents, but they'll also be stored in another folder where you'll have access to all of them at once. So I created a folder called Avid Letter within my assignment folder. Now I'm going to go back to my class rosters. This is the roster that I created using G-class folders. If I go back up to the menu to G-class folders, I can choose Get G-class Hub URL. What this is going to do is it's going to run the script, and it's going to give me a link to a URL to something called G-class Hub. G-class Hub is great because it allows me to use that same roster to start with to run 3 different scripts. Autocrat, which is a mail merge script. PageMeister, which creates individual pages on your class website for each of your students, and you can also run Doctopus, which is what you're going to see now. Now I can choose 1 or more classes. If I choose 1, I just click on it. If I want to choose 2 classes, I need to press either the Command key on a Mac or Control on a PC. But I'm just going to send this to my second period Avid class, and I'm going to choose Doctopus. So I'm going to click on Launch, and it's going to show me my list of students so I can make sure that everything is correct, and then I can name the new spreadsheet. So I'm going to name this spreadsheet my Avid Letter 2013 Doctopus script. So I'm going to create the new Doctopus, and you can watch the little octopus holding a bunch of documents moving around. And it is successful, so I can click on this link to go straight to that spreadsheet. Now on the spreadsheet, it takes all the information I need: the student first name, student last name, their period, their email. There's a place for flags. For example, if you have a student that's going to be out and you want to excuse them from that assignment, you can write excuse in this, and then it won't send them that particular document. But it also creates a key for their student folder, and this is going to match up with their individual folder that you created in your drive using G-class folders. So the next step is to click on Doctopus, which is automatically in the toolbar at the top of the page, and there's a how does this work, but then also a launch installation. I'm going to click on Launch Installation, and it's going to start running the script, and it should ask me to authorize it. So I'm going to press OK, and I then need to accept all that it wants to be able to do. And now I go back to Doctopus, and I have to click Launch Installation again. But this time it's not going to have me accept or approve it. It's going to give me a set of steps to complete. Step 1 is to set up your sharing. Now, to share a document, you can actually send this out to project groups. So you can assign groups for each of your students. Maybe you have 4 students all working on the same topic, so you can have 4 or 5 or 20 different groups within your class. You can also send out individual documents that are all the same, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just sending out a template for a letter. If you wanted to differentiate instruction, you can actually send out differentiated documents to different students that you flag in your class. Or you can send out one document that is shared between every single student in the class. I probably wouldn't use Doctopus to do this anymore since I set up G-class folders, but that is an option here. So I'm going to choose individual, all the same, and editors cannot change sharing positions is checked off. I do not want to give my whole class access to individual student documents, but I do want to allow my individual student access to edit. I can add any additional teachers that I want them to share this with, but I'm going to leave that blank now. Down at the bottom, we need to match up which columns go with our information. So the sheet that contains our roster is roster sheet. This column containing student email address is student email. And then I could have excused designation, and that would be in the flag column. Now, because I want this to go into individual student assignment folders, I want to make sure that this box is checked, that my students have individual folders I'd like to add this assignment to. And then you can press Save the settings. Now, step 2, choose which documents to copy and distribute. So here's where you have to look for your folder, and I placed mine in the Avid 1314 folder. And you need to give it a minute to find that folder, and now I can choose the template file. And my template was the document Letter to Teacher template. And I press Save Settings, and you get to watch the crazy little octopus again. Now, step 3. We need to choose a destination folder and set up file naming and notifications. Now, this is going to be saved in each individual student's assignment folders, but it does require that it goes into another folder in your drive. So that is why I created that Avid Letter folder. So I'm going to find that folder. So here it is, Avid Letter. And I get to choose how I want the file named. And I can type whatever I want to type. So for example, this is Avid Letters to Teachers. It's going to be individual students, so I'm going to say Avid Letter to Teachers. And I want it to have the student's first name and last name. So if I click on and highlight and copy and paste student first name, I'm going to add a space, and then student last name, and then apostrophe S, and then Avid Letter to Teachers. So what this would say if my student was Johnny Smith, it would say Johnny Smith's Avid Letter to Teachers. I can also choose to notify the document editors, so to notify my students that they are having this document shared with them or reshared with them if I take away their rights to edit. And in this case, I'm not going to do that. Students can find this document in their Shared With Me folder on their Google Drive. So I'm going to save the settings. And now we're on step 4, copy and share docs. So this just is a quick editing, make sure everything's okay. And so I'm going to look and just double check that everything is set correctly. And it is, so I'm going to run copy and share. Now, you can see popped up here on the right, there is some extra columns that got added. And what's going to happen is Doctopus is going to send out this document to each of the students. You can start to see some of the documents showing up on the right-hand side here, and they're actually links. So if I come back to this spreadsheet, I can click on the links to each of the students' documents. I could also go into that folder that I created that was in the Avid folder called Teacher Letter, and I'll see all of the documents listed there, and I can quickly search through them that way. Or I can go into each of my student individual folders, but it's probably easier to just go right through here. And the great thing about this is that all the documents are named how I want them, they're going to be easy to find, and I'm going to show you some other great features in a minute after this runs. It will probably take about 2 minutes for this process to go through for a total of 22 students. When I've used this in the past for 150 or 160 students, it does take a significant time longer. Sometimes it would take up to a half an hour for the documents to be sent out to the students. So you just kind of have to be patient, go and do something else as it's running. Every once in a while, it would get stuck on me, and it would get through a certain amount of students, and then it would stop. So all I would have to do is go back up to Doctopus up at the top, and it will allow me to choose step 4, and I would just run this again, and it would finish up and send it to the rest of the students. So don't worry if it doesn't go to all of your students at once. It's easy to fix and to send back out, but normally it runs all the way through, and it's simple to do. Alright, so it is finished creating the documents and sending them to each of my students, so I can press OK. Again, I can click on the link and it will go to that student's document, and it will be titled with their name. I can also go back to my Google Drive, and I can look in my assignment folder, and I have the folder that I created for this assignment, Avid Letter, and you can see that all the students' documents are here, and the names for each of the documents are consistent. They're just what I had told it to name them. Another place that I can go to find these is back to that spreadsheet. Now, Doctopus also has some great features. In Doctopus, I can embargo for grading. So again, if the due date has passed and I haven't gotten around to grading all of the students' assignments, I don't want them sneaking in and making any edits. So I can go back up to Doctopus and embargo for grading and set the editors to view only. I can also, let's say I've graded or corrected their rough drafts and I want them to now go back and edit and make a final copy. I can then push it back out to students so that they have the editing rights. I could also send out a personal email to each of the students with information about the project or comments that I want to give to them. Now, I can also attach what's called a rubric, and a rubric is basically a Google rubric. So what you would do is in a separate spreadsheet, you would create your rubric with the points and the different grading categories, the different comments within each of the categories on your rubric, and you would choose Attach a Rubric. Then, when you're on each of the students' documents, notice up at the top of my page there's this little eyeball here. That was on my students' final letter that they turned in. I can click on that eyeball, and I could actually just type in the points for each of the categories of my rubric, add any comments, and send that rubric as an email to my students. It will also take that rubric and copy it and paste it basically onto the bottom of the student's document. So they get the rubric in the email, they also get it on the document, so they get that feedback about why they were graded that way. Now, let's say this assignment's completely done and I want to give full ownership to my students. I can also do that in this Doctopus menu going at the bottom. It says done with this assignment, transfer the ownership back to the students. So Doctopus is a great way to easily send out documents to students, and it's nice and organized in your folders. To see the documents in each of the student folders, I'm going to go back to my Avid 13-14 folder, and then I'm going to choose Assignment Folders. And here in the Avid Letter, this is where you can find all of the students' documents. If I choose the Avid 13-14 Period 2 assignments, here you can see each of the students' individual assignment folders, and if I click on one, the document will be inside shared with them.